March of 2021. And when I came here, it was at that point in time that a unit was now being put together. So we started off with about 3 persons in the unit, and then we actually got new persons. And the reason why we opted to bring in new persons into the unit is we wanted people with private sector background, that sort of experience, because they would understand more about business, the etiquette that's involved in it, the professionalism, timings, and the need for efficiency in serving the diaspora. So very happy to say that the unit is well staffed, and we're actually looking to to add more persons to it because of the volume of work as a result of the new unit. And I can tell you, the young people that we have working in the unit has been doing a fantastic job, very professional. They're go-getters and they're very efficient in what they do. We've been getting lots of positive feedback on that. In addition to that, we were able to also add a communications officer to the unit, and what this person does is to create content for the diaspora that and disseminates it throughout the diaspora wherever they're scattered. That has been very effective and helpful to us in getting the information about the country to as far as it possibly go. And because of that, we're also able to get a lot of inquiries and interest in diaspora project as a result of that level of communication. And so with the team that's comprised of young people that are go-getters, that are understand the dynamism of professionalism and the requirements of serving diaspora, we are able to put together a team that works extremely well and professionally, and so we're able to deliver a whole lot more output than when I first came. So for 2022, I would say that we engaged about 1,000 individuals in diaspora engagements and in many different sectors. So 1,000 may seem, it depends on how you look at it, whether it's a lot or maybe a small number when compared to the total number of diasporans we have across the world. But when you think about it, the 1,000 person that we've engaged is not a one-off where you meet with them, you hear what they have to say, and then you just let it be. These are people that the unit has actually been followed up frequently with, getting updates as to their interest, the project, where it's at. So for example, if a member from our diaspora, let's say in the US or Canada, would have submitted to us a proposal, a business proposal, what the unit does in facilitating that is to take it to the agency that deals with it and all the other agencies that are involved in that process. We don't just leave it there. The unit staff actually does a lot of follow-up basically with that agency to ensure that there is a timely response to this project. Are we getting all of our documents in order? What's going on? So when you talk about 1,000 persons being engaged over the year, it is not a one-off engagement, but it has been a continuous dialogue and communication with the agency and the diaspora, the member of the diaspora, to make sure that there is a huge element of success in what they're interested in. So that's a pretty interesting thing that should happen. So it's about 1,000 persons, and there are about 22 countries that we were able to engage with for 2022. You're talking as far back as Japan, yeah, and we do have persons in Japan, not a whole lot. We have actually engaged someone in Peru, and quite a lot actually from the Caribbean. If I were to tell you in terms of the breakdown of the countries where we had the greatest number of engagement, initially the year started out with the US, Canada, and the UK being in the lead in that particular order. But as we got from mid-year coming down to December, Trinidad actually surpassed our engagements with the other countries by far. So we have a lot of Guyanese that are in Trinidad and Tobago that are actually seriously interested in Guyana. And so we've had a significant number of Guyanese from Trinidad engaging with the unit in their areas of interest, whether it's investments or re-migration, or how can they offer their service back to the country basically. So that's been tremendous basically. As I mentioned earlier, the communication element that we added, this is a great success part for us, basically has alleviated a lot of the pressures that we initially faced in getting information out there in a timely manner. So we are able to offer support to our foreign missions in the consulates, the High Commission, our honorary council, wherever that information is needed, and also that bridge a lot of the gaps that were there. It filled a lot of the gaps that were there initially. So if, let's say, an honorary council from one of the region had a difficulty with a particular agency here, the communication officer as well as our staff will be able now to get that information and communicate it with the honorary council as well as the person in the that particular country. So that's been tremendous. One of the major accomplishments for the unit for 2022, it's really our engagements with local stakeholders. Oftentimes, when we talk about diaspora engagement, we seem to think of it more in terms of the diaspora coming into the country and showing an interest in Guyana. But there's another element of it which I believe was not addressed in maybe the decades that have gone by, and this is more the outward, the agencies here and how they engage the diaspora. So when I first came into the position, we started out by getting a lot of negative feedback about what the engagement process was like when it comes to Guyana and the diaspora and meeting with agencies and ministries. So we opted to start to have a good foundation, because it doesn't make any sense that we get a lot of inquiries from the diaspora, a lot of interest. But then what do we do with these interests? What do we do with the projects, basically? And we don't want it to end up on someone's desk, basically. So one of the key things we began to do is a massive sensitization program and awareness program that helps ministries and agencies to understand what diaspora engagement is and how they can better serve the diaspora. And so for this year, we've done quite a lot of that. We're actually doing training with a lot of these agencies in terms of customer service and delivery. Because, for example, you don't want, if we get like, let's say 20 or 30 complaints or reports per month about a particular transaction with a particular agency or institution, we can solve it, and we do solve it for them by connecting with those agencies and ensuring that that problem is being resolved. But then there's a root cause to why there are so many of those kinds of complaints. And so what we've done is opted to engage that agency directly so that systems and procedures can be improved. And so when the diaspora member connects with that agency or ministry, then they're assured that their problem is being solved right at the origin of it, basically, and not have to come through a third party. So that's been going on quite well, and there's going to be a whole lot more of that happening in 2023. One of our major success basically is also bringing in a lot of our diaspora stories back to Guyana. And the reason for that is oftentimes we don't give the diaspora a lot of credit for their level of contribution. So what our communications office has been doing is engaging them. So on our Facebook page for the Diaspora Unit, you'll see a lot of interviews being done where it talks about people's projects when they left Guyana, what they've accomplished over the years, and then how they've actually spent their time and resources in Guyana to help make a difference one way or the other. So that's been pretty good and been going on quite well. We also have a lot of major projects that we've been quietly working on, but I don't want to disclose what those projects are. We want it to be a real big surprise when it actually gets launched. There were many persons who wanted to launch it this year, but there were some setbacks and some delays and maybe application and paperwork and so forth, which is fine. We understand weather being also another issue. But it was unfortunate we couldn't launch them as we wanted in 2022. But come 2023, you're going to see those major projects actually being launched, and it'll be quite surprising. Some of them are really, really attractive. If you look into my office, you'll see some of the plans that are there, basically. So we've been working very intensely with these persons. The other major accomplishment is we've been able to build a lot of trust with the diaspora. This is very useful because as we continue to do our mapping, so we started with some countries in the mapping. We're going to really be more progressive in that one year in 2023, sorry. When it comes to doing mapping, again, and data from our diaspora, trust is critical to that process because people want to be comfortable giving information which will be helpful in guiding policy and programs that are aimed for the diaspora. And so one of the ways we were able to build that trust is actually to just show that we were literally working for the diaspora, which is why the engagements that we've had with the people all over actually is very, very important. So it enables people to see that the unit is working. The staff there are implementing changes and they're actually facilitating our interests. So that engenders a lot of trust, and so it's easier now to engage and to share information for what we're needed, for what we need, basically. There are interests in pretty much all of the sector, but it varies. So right now, if I were to rank them in terms of the numbers that we received in the various areas of interest, one, remigration. That's the first thing. So there have been a lot of queries and a lot of meetings and a lot of people who come into the office to inquire about remigration. Even as we speak, my phone actually, I've got several queries that came through to the phone to ask, what is the remigration process? Basically, what does it entail? What am I entitled to get when if I decide to take this step to come back to Ghana? So remigration is number one. The second thing is there's a lot of investment interest in Guyana. And the investment interest is spread across several sectors. Agriculture actually is one of the areas that a lot of diaspora people are actually interested in. We have somebody in Atlanta who's going to be retiring from a very high flying job in that state there very soon. And he wants to come back and start a major livestock farm in Guyana. So that's an area that we're looking at. We have somebody who's interested in planting rice coming back because he said when he was in Guyana, he worked in the rice sector, migrated, and now he wants to come back home and go back into the rice industry basically. So that's an area also we've seen it. We have persons who also wants to know how they can buy rice in the bulk from Guyana and export it to other countries. So these are all areas of interest that we're really trying to facilitate basically. Persons interested in planting. And for example, I think there's a lady that wants to do cassava. There's another lady from Suriname that wants to come back and rear chickens. So you have a lot of interest in livestock and farming in Ghana, which we've been working with the Ministry of Agriculture and facilitating, and they've been very supportive actually. The other areas of interest also is job. A lot of Guyanese are interested in coming back to Guyana and finding jobs basically. Again, in the skilled, the semi-skilled, and the unskilled area, more or less. And so different countries, the diaspora is very different in those countries. Although Guyanese profile is very different. And so, for example, you'll find a diaspora in Suriname is very different from the diaspora in London or in Toronto or in New York or Atlanta. Um, and so what you find basically is that based on where the location is, that's how you're able to determine the skill sets, the educational background, and where they're likely to fit in, basically. So we have a lot of persons with very high skills who are into computers, or engineers, or doctors, or I think we have to meet with a surgeon next week, basically to discuss his area of interest. And so that's an area where we find a lot of people are interested in where can we find jobs. And again, it's very, very varied across the sector, basically. Philanthropy is another area of major interest for the diaspora. We've finished facilitating a medical mission from Canada, and unfortunately, they could not come in November of this year because some of the members had some personal issues, so they could not make it. But they will be here in March of 2023. We were able to successfully facilitate that with the Ministry of Health, and so everything's all set. They're going to be down here to conduct that medical mission in March, in the new year. And so philanthropy is another area. Volunteerism, we find there are lots of people who want to come back and offer their services on a pro bono basis, which is very good. And so what we're doing is working with the various agencies and ministries to see how best that can be facilitated, basically. But there's a whole lot, there's a volume of that coming in there. Basically, tourism, yes. We have persons actually who are modifying and renovating their properties to turn them into bread and breakfast kind of facilities. And so over December, we were in contact with someone from Canada who was a little bit upset that they could not get their license in time to start their bread and breakfast and some other things they have to grab to cash in on the Christmas season, basically. But it was after the holidays and they got their license. So I think in early January they should be launching that one. Is somewhere in Berbice, and we had an ecotourism launch that was launched in Kanji. That was last year, basically. So that's tourism is another area of interest. And what we've been doing is whenever we have our virtual meetings, we try to promote the country as well. And so we would have all these videos that we would be sourcing from GT and from other sources, basically, that we would show as a teaser. And so a lot of people now are interested in coming back to Guyana to see and to explore their country, basically. So we do our little bit to get people more interested in the tourism product here in Guyana. So that's another area that we see great interest, basically. So and what we found also is a significant interest in real estate. That's another area. Actually, we're going to be having some webinars on real estate, basically, particularly with the Condominium Act that was recently passed in the Parliament. Lots of people want to come back and they're asking questions about how can you get land to build condominiums or also housing facilities for the elderly or startup homes, basically in apartment complexes. So what we've been doing is we've been talking to them, and we've been facilitating them with meetings with the Ministry of Housing and Water so they can talk to the official there and get clear guidance as to how they can go about and pursue and make these projects reality. At this point, what is happening is that they've sent me an expert CV to look through it to see if this person's experience and training is what we're looking for. Because if we agree with that, then the expert will come in 2023 now to train the unit in communication and digitalization. And so that's currently where we're at, and I'm currently going through the CV to see, if it matches with our goals and objectives and what we're looking for. So that means the expert will come and build the capacity of the unit in those areas. And we also submitted information to them on some of the projects that we'll be working on. That gives them an idea of the process that's involved in it. And that will help them now to analyze how to structure their suggestions or their recommendations, basically. So they're currently going through the data that we give them, basically, to come up with that proposal. So I think we're looking at another visit in about March of 2023, where they'll come down with some more people, basically, now to do the training, the capacity building, and also to present the first phase of the recommendations based on the information we submitted and the information that we've gotten from the agencies that they engaged here just about a month ago. So one of the things that we've realized and we need to work on, it's been a major challenge, is really to get timely information as well as prompt response from some agencies, actually. So what would happen is when we get an interest or a correspondence from the member of the diaspora, the unit has been trained to act very rapidly on that because we know people expect an answer. And so we would dispatch that correspondence, or we would do our own internal communication with a specific agency to say we have an interest here, or there's a request for a meeting to discuss a particular project or an idea, or their skill sets to see if it's of use to you. One of the challenges we had is you have to constantly call and do a lot of follow-up in order to get a response from a lot of people. Now that takes a lot of time, basically, time that we can spend serving more people from the diaspora, and so that's one of the major challenges that we have. And so what we're looking at is really to work with these agencies now to say, hey, how can we remedy that? The second thing that one of the major challenges we've encountered is a lot of our systems in Guyana are still largely paper-based and in person. And so that is an age-old problem, basically, the diaspora constantly talked about. The length of time it takes for something to go through a process, or that you have to physically be here. We've done as much as we can to explain under the circumstances why they may be required to be here in person to do it. And there are very justifiable cases for them to be in Guyana to conduct certain transactions. But of course, there are some other transactions that can be done virtually. And we've been having a lot of discussions with these agencies to talk about digitalization, for example, of certain processes. It is a work in progress, and as you'd recall, just about a month ago, we partner with the EU Global Diaspora Facility, and what they're going to do is build the capacity of the unit to better serve the diaspora, which is something I'm very excited about. And at the same time, they're actually going to be working on a proposal for the unit, basically, and how we can use digitalization to better serve the diaspora. So we're looking forward to seeing what some of those recommendations are that we can share with various agencies to say, hey, these are some ideas and some examples based on best practices and what's been going on in other countries who are engaged in their diaspora digitally, so we can improve our service to the diaspora as well. So that is a major challenge in terms of getting some of our services online. But one of the things I should mention that the experts that came basically to look at this project here talked about is that they were very impressed because they saw that a lot of steps are being taken to put a lot of the projects online, a lot of the services online. So it's a bit of a challenge, but it's also a very good thing. There's some light at the end of the tunnel there, so we're very happy about that, basically. But if we can get a lot more agencies to respond rapidly, much and more professionally, then a lot of our challenges would actually be reduced significantly, and that's exactly what we want. one of the things we want to do is to continue that awareness and training program that we have in local agencies and ministry, because that is so crucial for a lot of our diaspora. We want them to be able to connect directly with some of these agencies and ministries, and to be confident that when they put an interest there, it has been addressed professionally, it has been addressed efficiently, and within a certain timeline. There's some agencies that we have to do a whole lot more work with than others. There are inquiries that we have, for example, like how do you acquire lots for residential purposes or investment purposes, and those are some of the things that we want to work with in 2023. Because when it comes to diaspora, for example, persons re-migrating to Guyana, they want to be able to know what is the time frame that we're looking at when it comes to getting a house lot or getting a land for investors. That way they can plan their entire process, and how they intend to move, what timelines they're looking at. And we don't really have a lot of that bit of information, so we're hoping in 2023 we can make get more precise information on that to share with the diaspora. So that's major. We're going to continue with our mapping, like I said, and the mapping is going to enable us to know the spread, the geographic spread, and more of the profiles of our diaspora. Right now, we can safely advise government on where they can acquire specific skills from, should they need that, or what are the resources that can be coming from, that can come from different locations. We can give that, but we want to have more statistics to support that bit of information, actually. So that we're going to continue that in 2023. And one of the major things that we're going to do for 2023 is to have an inter-stakeholders meeting, where we'll bring in people. We already started discussing it, to bring in people to talk a bit more about Guyana's need for labor. We've been hearing a lot about that for the past year or more. There's going to be a whole lot more skill sets that are required. And of course, as you may or may not know, the diaspora has been touted as one of the source of skills, basically, for it. But the unit, interestingly, has been receiving a lot of applications from Guyanese all over the world that are interested in coming back to Guyana to work, from the very highest in academia to the very experienced in some of the high-flying jobs that would have in their foreign country, to some of the semi-skilled and the unskilled. So we can actually we have a lot of CVs basically that we received from Guyanese all over the world. We've done our best to facilitate as much as we can. And so I can tell you there are some success stories, basically, that people who come through the office were able to find jobs, and so they're very happy about that and able to get a lot of their problems resolved. And so what we want to do is to now delve a little deeper into that entire request for labor, to understand what are the sectors that need the labor, what skill sets are they looking at, what experience, what training, and how many and what period of time are you looking for to get these the number of skills to come into Guyana to work. So when we get that definitive information, we can go back to the diaspora and say, hey, listen, in about 2 years from now, we'll need maybe 2,000 of this particular skill set, or 500 of engineers, those kinds of things. So that way the diaspora would have the information, can ready themselves for when the call comes now, that you can respond and come back home. And that's a major project for us for 2023.